Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 9:30 p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta, Monday night, October the 4th, and I'm happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us. It's a 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and the chat room is open if anybody would like to sit in there, and I have popped the link into the chat there that I want to talk about tonight. I sort of want to finish up with looking at the website, irvingstudios.com, Child Abuse Survivor Monument website. It's a great website. I hope everybody will go check it out. Lots of good information on there. Excuse me. And I want to look tonight at something that's very important to me, is how to respond when someone you know discloses having been abused as a child, right? And it's from www.irvingstudios.com/child_abuse_survivor_responding.htm. And this website is awesome. Michael C. Irving, he's a psychotherapist, he is a sculptor, he is a survivor of child abuse himself, and he works just all the time to try to help survivors of child abuse and to try to help spread the word on, raising awareness and education, prevention of child abuse. And his website is just awesome. It's for adult survivors. It's for anyone who wants more information on child abuse. And he created, along with a whole lot of survivors of child abuse, created a monument in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And this monument is called the Child Abuse Survivor Monument. I've never seen it. I've never seen it personally. I've just seen what's on the web there on this website. And it's just amazing. And there's all kinds of videos on here, and they talk about how they did the monument, and the different some of the survivors talk about what it meant to them to be able to be part of this monument, and it's just awesome. So I hope you will check it out. And lots of great resources for people who have been abused, as well as just anyone looking for information regarding child abuse and prevention, right? So I want to look at this one section here, and I'm not a professional counselor or therapist. I always just make sure I tell everybody that. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own blog talk shows, really because I just want to be one more voice out here talking about child abuse and the issues that surround it and how to prevent it, and looking for information all the time, right? Because I'm in between courses. I can't afford to go to school right now, so I just keep studying anyway, because I figure, well, I may as well just keep learning and keep looking for the information and just to bring out to people, and I'm learning a lot myself as I go, see. So it's just, it's good to talk about this stuff. Child abuse, as long as it's shoved under the carpet and we don't talk about it, then it just gets to continue to happen, right? That's what's been going on all along, is silence, right? Nobody wants to talk about child abuse. It's not something that people want to sit around and talk about at lunchtime on their lunch breaks. It's not something that people want to talk around the dinner table about. And yet, we really should be. It's an epidemic, and it's killing our kids. And there's so many kids out there right now, right this minute, who are being abused horrifically in every way: verbal abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, you name it, neglect. It's absolutely horrific, and it's all 100% preventable. Every bit of it is preventable, and that's what bothers me. And so that's why we need to talk about it. And the more people want, of course, abusers want everybody silenced because they want to continue to do what they do, abuse their children and abuse other people or other people's children. And survivors so many times will stay silent because the abusers are still living and they're afraid of the consequences. They might be fearing for their lives. Many times adult survivors won't speak out just because of the shame involved. And then there's many reasons why they don't disclose the abuse, and there's so many children being abused where people know about it, but it's not being reported. Of course, because everybody wants it silenced. Nobody wants to hear about it. It's a really ugly topic, but that's all I talk about. So, thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. I really do. I have almost 11,500 shows listened to. Somebody's listening. I've got some great friends in the chat room here tonight, Storm Chaser and Gypsy Witch. Thank you so much for coming by and listening to my shows and hanging out with me for this half hour. I appreciate it. So we're going to get right on with the topic here. This is responding, how to respond when someone discloses having been abused as a child. And this is something that really touches my heart because that's what I talk about on my morning shows, one child abuse survivor to another mainly. And, that's, for me, this just touches my heart, this whole topic here. So I wanted to bring this up tonight. And it's hard for somebody to come forward and say, I've been abused. It's extremely hard to break the silence. You have to find the strength within you. If you have never experienced that, there has to come this huge realization that if you don't tell it could really compromise your life. That's what happened to me. I was sitting around thinking, if I don't tell somebody, I'm going to die. If I don't die just out of sheer depression and not taking care of myself or self-injuring, then it'll be committing suicide. Like I had to tell, and I had to go public with my story. It was killing me not to, and I sometimes, survivors just have to tell. And so there are ways that people can respond. Again, and here he's listed off, how to respond properly to somebody who says, hey, I've been abused. It actually discloses to you that they've been abused, because it's a very hard thing. They're putting their whole heart on the line. They're putting their whole self on the line when they do that, survivors of abuse, because all of a sudden they're vulnerable to you. If they tell you that they've been abused, it puts them in a very vulnerable spot, because the other person will either accept them for who they are and accept them that, just as they are, whether they're wounded and abused and, having so many issues because of the abuse they suffered as, and as an adult having all these adult survivor issues, whether it's post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety issues, depression, any number of things, right, could be going on in their lives, right? Substance abuse, you never know what. It could be a number of things. And or just feeling down all the time, or they take the risk that you'll either be that way, that you won't like them and accept them for who they are, as they are, survivors of abuse, or that you will accept them. So they're putting themselves on the line by disclosing the abuse. It's a very serious thing, and so it's really important to know kind of how to respond to somebody who does tell you they've been abused, right? Because you don't want to hurt them worse than they've already been hurt. That's the whole issue, right? They're putting their heart out there on the line again to be tromped on and trampled on, and it could be the final straw. You know what I mean? It could be the final straw that breaks the camel's back, that if they disclose the abuse and they get a lot of negative response from the person or the people that they tell, they might even go even further within themselves, never talk about it again, and they could kill themselves or any number of things, right? So it's so important. And if you're a survivor of child abuse, I would hope that you would never, ever do that. Suicide is never the answer, never, ever the answer. Two of my brothers basically committed suicide. One of my brothers did commit suicide, and the other one died of a drug overdose at the age of 43, and one of my brothers committed suicide at the age of 33, and neither one of them did the right thing. I want you guys to all know that anyone who's listening to this, suicide is never the answer, because there is hope and there is a better day coming. And so you've been through all this stuff in the past, so you can go through it some more until it gets better. And that's what I have to say. And I'm so glad I realized that. There's not always, it's not always going to be roses and, the best of times. But the thing is that we can do it, because I look for those good days. I look for those better days, And that's what it's all about. And then when I do have a good day and a better day, then I'm happy about it. And I'm like, right on. And then just more good days come and more good days come. And this is a reality. And I hope that people will take that seriously. So it says, in responding, I'm going to read right from the page here. It says, be a good listener, first of all. Be a good listener. Take your lead from the person who's disclosing abuse, right? Seek helpful knowledge and information as well as support for yourself. So if somebody comes to you and tells you, I've been abused, and you start talking to them about it and listening to them tell you about their abuse, right? And maybe you've never been abused, and maybe you didn't know anything about it or didn't know a whole lot about it, and all of a sudden you're getting all these details. It can be quite disturbing, and quite shocking for somebody who's never heard of that or never even thought of some of the horrific things that people go through. It's good for you to get support too. If somebody comes to you and really starts leaning on you for support, you almost need to get support too, because it's very helpful to have someone there to sort of be on your side to say, yeah, I know what that's like, and there's some great information, and or you can talk to somebody about it if it's really distressing you, but you didn't want to hurt the survivor's feelings by talking to them about it. You can always get some help yourself, and I think that's so important, because that's what that's what people in the system have to do, like social workers and whatnot, and psychiatrists and whatnot. When they hear all this horrible stuff all the time, sometimes they have to get support too, because otherwise you burn out. You burn out as a friend. You can burn out as a supporter. You can burn out just because you've had to be part and privy to this horrific stuff, right? That's the thing. It is very hard on people. It absolutely is. But if we don't talk about it, it's going to continue on. And so that's the whole issue. Until we fix this mess and we stop child abuse, this is what's happening. And this is just ridiculous that this many people have to go through this all the time, day after day after day, year after year, you know what I mean? And why? Why can we not stop this? This is absolutely ridiculous. $104 billion spent every year in the United States alone because of child abuse. Not to stop child abuse, because of it. So why don't we spend, $1 trillion and stop child abuse? Let's just multiply it by 10 and stop child abuse once and for all. Get every single person involved that wants to be involved to help families. Start pumping some money into this thing and stop worrying about the budget and start fixing our society, because our society is a mess. And, North America wide, right? So no child should suffer like that, and I don't care. Then they have to grow up to be adults in the situation and try to learn how to live, right? And it's very, very hard, and no one deserves that ever. So we really, it's not about money. It should never be about money. We need to get these kids some help, and we need to get these parents some help so that they will stop abusing their children. And these other sick people, these child sexual predators and whatnot, men and women who abuse children, right? This is absolutely sick, and they need help. They need to stop what they're doing. And so really the whole thing needs to be revamped, right? We need to start seeing some programs rolling out that will work. And there are programs that do work. It's just that, they're not funded. So it says, choose the right time and situation to discuss any strong emotional response, especially a response that may include ambivalence and doubt. Look beyond the statistics. See the person and listen to the story. It says you need to take the time to sort through your own feelings. You are not the enemy. The survivor may project this onto you. It says you may feel damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of thing. When you're talking to somebody who's really not very far along in their healing journey, they can kind of push that off on you sometimes. They almost, it's not like they necessarily project the blame on you, but they almost don't appreciate your support in so many ways, just because they are suffering so badly and haven't come very far in their healing journey. This is people that would just disclose abuse to you, and they might have just started talking about it, never really dealt with it. And so, it's hard on people because then you think, well, why am I even helping this person or trying to be a support to them when they don't appreciate it, and they're, I'm just damned if I do and damned if I don't sort of thing, right? And I think you have to realize not to take that personal. It's their problem, not yours. And the best thing you can do is not allow yourself to be mistreated in the situation, but just say, hey, I'm sticking by you, good or bad, and we're going to get through this together. And then they know that you're there for them, whereas many times survivors will try to push people away to see who their real friends are, because it's pretty evident, if you push hard enough, the people that don't really want to have anything to do with you will take off really quickly. And the people who really care about you will stick around. And I found that out. I found out who my real friends are. So profound pain demands a profound response, steeped in humanness, right? So it's very, very emotionally draining on people, right? Listening to a survivor. I know listening to my shows must be just completely emotionally draining on people. But I'm doing this for a reason, and that's for other survivors who maybe have experienced the same things and just never thought there was anybody else out there that would even be able to validate what they went through or validate their emotions or feelings, And so my one child abuse survivor to another show is really pretty heavy duty with those type of profound, deep feelings, and emotions, right, which I allow to come out. And it's mainly for that purpose, so that people will, can relate to that. And they say, oh, my God, I can relate to this person. I totally know. And then they think, oh, I'm not alone, and I can get help, and I can have a good life. And, that's the main purpose for me doing that. And as well as it helps me because I get to put it in its place, right? So discussion, how to respond when someone you know discloses having been abused as a child. It says realities. The messages to the survivor are you don't disclose, it's not safe to do so, right? They've been told that probably or they just know it, right? They don't trust people. So in the back of their minds they're thinking, man, I'm not telling anybody because I just don't trust anyone, right? And or they'll just get hurt. Like if they know about the abuse, then they'll just use it against me, which is quite often sometimes people do that. And I've had that happen to me. And so you just, you start telling people because you're like, oh, well, they just use it against me anyway. So, or don't tell me, the attitude of not wanting to know, right? Now that can happen too. That also includes family. That's what's going on in my family right now. They just don't want to even talk about it. They know what I'm doing. And they don't like it because it causes them to see what they went through, because we all grew up in the same home, right? So it's, they just don't even want to know what I'm doing. They don't care. They're just like, whatever. There's no support there, right? It's hard. It says this promotes the inner or self-denial for the survivor. It says if quote unquote, if you tell, you will feel ostracized. Right? You'll feel like, people just they just see you as somebody who's damaged, or you'll just be looked down upon, right? We see this constantly in abused children. It's not safe to tell. Yeah, well, and many times the abusers tell you, not to tell. I mean, my mom used to tell me she'd kill me if I told, and I did tell, but and she'd still tell me she'd kill me if I told. But the thing is, she was just always threatening to kill me. But the thing is, you start to develop this thing where you think, well, she could kill me if I, really she could. So you just think, oh well, when the opportunity comes along, which it did a few times for me, you just. One time a school teacher actually asked me if everything was okay at home, because I think she noticed that I kept wearing the same clothes over and over, and I was crying and just kind of miserable, and I told her, yeah, everything was fine, right? I was like, I'm not going to get involved in that one, because I was like, no, and my mom will kill me. It says when children do tell, they start to feel. Any adult who learns of this abuse gets transported to an entirely different world. People have great difficulty transposing information of this kind, and this may result in the survivor being isolated due to others' feelings of awkwardness. And this is a reality in the process of disclosure, and that's true. So many times that when I tell people what I do, and I give them my card for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, because I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and I give them my business card, and I tell them what I do, and that I've written my memoirs and A Life of Death, the Redemption, and whatnot, and I'm a survivor as well. You should see the awkwardness. They almost don't know what to say, so they kind of just don't say anything, and they kind of back up, and then they talk to you a little differently, and you don't want to be treated like that. You know what I mean? I'm just a person like everybody else. The only thing I don't want is any more abuse from people. But I think people then feel like they have to walk on eggshells around you, which is not the case. Mainly we're just people, survivors are just like everybody else. They just want good friends who care about them. They, of course, would love to have a family that cared about them. Many times that's not the case. So friends are very important to survivors, because friends really become a survivor's family mainly, because if the family was dysfunctional and they're still abusive, then they're not going to have any real support there. So friends and other people can be such a huge resource for survivors, right? And so that's, so important for people to know that. They really do need support from friends and from peers, from people who would accept them for just who they are, and of course not take any crap off them, but accept them for who they are and just love them for who they are, and just say, I love you for just who you are. You know what I mean? And I'm not expecting you to be any other way. I just want you to be better, and I want you to have a good life, and I care about you. And mainly that's what they want to hear, that you care about them, because when you grow up abused as a child, there's really probably not very many people caring about you, right? And that's the problem for these children out here today. So they'll grow up, knowing really that their family does not care about them, and then they're going to have all these issues later on in life, trying to make friends and trust issues, and can you trust anybody? I don't know, it's a huge issue, right? So it says disclosure takes a lot of courage on the part of the survivor. It places the demand on the listener. Listeners, often partners of the abused, feel thrown into it. This subject is foreign to them, right? So if they haven't been abused, they feel like, oh man, look what's been pushed onto me. And it's not that they don't love their partner or the person that they're dealing with, but they feel like it's just been thrown on them, this heavy weight, And it is. It's a very heavy weight, and it's a very heavy load to carry for your friend. And so that's why you have to get support yourself. If you are helping somebody who is going through the first preliminary, pretty much the stages of their healing, and haven't really done a lot of healing and are still suffering, it can bring you down, right? So you have to make sure that you get some help too, some support there too, so that you don't go down with them, because you want to be able to support them, so you don't want to go down, because you'll need to be there for that person and yourself. You have to matter too. It's not all just about the other person. You have to care about yourself as well and take care of yourself. And that's what happens to so many people who work in social work and different things like this, human services, because they get so burned out. They're looking after everybody else and not themselves, right? And that's what happens to children who grow up in homes with dysfunctional parents, who the parents only care about their own needs. The children's needs don't come first. And so the parents, in this codependent relationship, the children learn not to care about themselves and only to care about the parents' needs. And so then when the child grows up, they have a real hard time caring about themselves, but they're really good at looking after everybody else. And so that's another problem, right? So we do have to look after ourselves, and we have to know what we can handle, what we can't handle, you know what I mean, what we can take on and what we can't, right, as far as helping a survivor. And, if you have to know your limitations and what you can do, It's so important, because you don't want to get lost in the mess, right? Because it is a mess, let me tell you. It says, profound pain demands a profound response steeped in humanness, not a typical institutional response. Like for, quote unquote, when I disclosed, the hardest part was dealing with the people around me. I secluded myself. My identity at that time was that I was an abuse victim. I was floundering. I needed a script to help deal with other people at the time. I needed people to be silent or just do mundane things. So that was quote unquote. The message has to go to survivors. They need the tools to protect themselves, a script. For survivors, there is no direction to disclose unless one is in a therapeutic setting. And so more information, more help is needed to help survivors to disclose. And the listener needs to follow his or her partner to let the survivor discover that I'll be there for you, quote unquote. I can promise to follow. Survivors need to be able to state their needs and to practice saying, I need. See, survivors, of child abuse, you don't say, I need anything, right? Because as a child, children are not allowed to say that kind of stuff in a home where there's a lot of abuse, right? The minute you say you need something, it could invoke a beating or verbal abuse, right? So quite often their needs just are not met. So they don't quite often vocalize their needs. They know they have needs, but they don't vocalize them. They won't tell anybody, right? So since survivors need help with their fears of being crazy or of dying, and there's no support. So that's, this is just it. It's a huge, huge issue. How to respond? It says, take the lead from the survivors. Be a good listener. Revealing profound pain demands a profound response. So he repeats himself here a few times. Steeped in humanness. So you must learn to walk with the person who's wounded. And the language needs to change in order to address the core of the experience. To walk alongside someone who is disclosing is a very vulnerable situation, one that is not comfortable for most people. And listening and being non-judgmental is important. Our language around disclosure is very judgmental and can close people off. So, yeah, you have to be careful what you say, like, to a survivor, because many times survivors, if, for instance, I've seen this happen before. It didn't happen with me, but I've actually heard this and seen this where a survivor, somebody would say that their parents had abused them, or a parent, and then somebody else who was just a supporter would say, yeah, shame on them, how dare they, and they'd start bad-mouthing the parent, and then the survivor would be like, yeah, but I love my parent, and it would hurt the survivor's feeling because they, they were bad-mouthing their parent. And that can happen because survivors, sometimes do love their parents, and don't hate them, right? So that's the whole issue. And that was my case. But the thing is, I never get mad when people badmouth my parents, because it's not like I badmouth them, but I know the truth. Truth is truth. But the thing is some people are very sensitive, so it's just a good idea to be careful what you say around people who are suffering like that, because they, it's better just to be there as a support and not be too judgmental. Just a good idea. Tips for listeners: choose the right time to discuss your ambivalence or doubts. Partners and others need support themselves and outlets. It says each survivor feels that I know what I know, often in the face of doubt and skepticism of others. An ounce of doubt on the part of a listener could swing a survivor around. So you don't want to do that. Listeners need to listen. They need to listen to the voice saying this is real. Be present. Be aware of all the signs. Do some research and get educated on how to read the signs. It says don't stigmatize the person. Listeners may be racked with doubt for a while, but don't feel this block your ability to listen to the survivor. We need to de-emphasize the statistics and emphasize the stories. And we need to connect the statistics to the stories to make them real. And we need to find a vehicle to express the stories, to package them, to heighten public awareness. We need to find the ways to get the message out. So that's what he says. And so that's really quite interesting. That's what he had to say there. And of course he's got his references and whatnot here, references for all the material that he was using there. And this is the thing. This is so important. You know, if you know somebody, which most of us do actually, anybody who knows me knows a survivor of child abuse. So, but the 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 6 boys will be abused sexually in some way under the age of 18. That's a fact. Those are the stats, and that's just the known numbers that are out there. You can find them on every website that actually has child abuse statistics. 1 in 3, pretty much 1 in 3 to 4 girls, 1 in 6 to 7 boys, depending on which stats you look at. Children will be sexually abused under the age of 18 in some way, whether it's unwanted sexual touching, molestation, exploitation, rape, you name it. So if you know 3 girls, chances are you know somebody, you know, who's been abused. And if you know 6 men or 6 boys, you know somebody who's been abused, right? And this is how serious this is. It's absolutely so such an epidemic. And people, you know, there's people, reporters and stuff that say these stupid things like, child abuse is not an epidemic. There's no problem with child abuse in this country. And it's like, and what my response to that is, well, go talk to the police officers that go pick up these kids in the body bags, right? Go talk to these police officers that go and cart these abusing parents off to jail while they take the kid to the hospital. Let's see, go talk to some ambulance drivers who have to try to, ambulance paramedics and whatnot, who have to try to race these kids to the emergency room to operate on them. Go talk to some people, morgue directors and whatnot, who work and run these morgues, you know, and they'll tell you how many bodies come through and how many children come through who have been abused. Let's see, go visit some children's hospitals and talk to them about how many kids come through there with abuse-related injuries every day, right? And then talk to some survivors, and they'll tell you something completely different. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous that people don't think this is a problem and that there's just no issue with it, right? It's all denial. It's society in denial. It's families in denial. It's everyone in denial. We don't want to know about it. It's ugly. It's disgusting. It's disgraceful. Let's pretend it doesn't happen. Well, you know, I bet you all these kids out here who are being abused tonight would sure like to pretend it's not happening to them tonight too. You know, it's like, oh yeah, if I could just pretend that my mom or dad wasn't going to beat the shit out of me or rape me or burn me or do whatever they're going to do to me tonight. Boy, I wish I could pretend about that. They can't pretend. It's their reality, right? So that's the whole issue. This is not pretend. It's not a game, and it's not funny. And it's very serious, and we do have to do all we can within our power to get the word out, signs and symptoms, learn the signs and symptoms, know what you're looking at. You know, pay attention to the children in your own life, first of all. Do what you can to make sure they're not being abused, you know. Do all you can to protect them. Just realize that wherever your kid is at during the day or night, that's where the abuse will happen. So if it's not you that's abusing your children, it could be somebody else. And it's generally a family member. So remember that. 90 to 95% of abuse happens in the home, and it happens and is perpetrated by a family member or somebody that the child knows or trusts. That's very important for people to know. The other 5 to 10% of child abuse occurs outside the home by a stranger, and, you know, child sexual predator, somebody getting a hold of your kid at some store and raping them in the bathroom or something, which is just horrific. But that's rare. 90 to 95% of abuse happens within the home. So if people think, oh, it would never happen in my home, that abuse doesn't happen in my family, get a grip and realize that it does. And you better be watching out for your children to make sure that they're not being abused, right? It's so important. Check out Dreamcatchers for Abused Children website at http://www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com and get the signs and symptoms. Get the free PDF download that they have there, the Child Abuse Handbook, which was compiled by Donna Shear and Sandra Potter. Donna Shear is the president of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. Sandra Potter is the CEO and founder. And be sure and check that out. Get your copy. It's free. You can just download it, and you can read it. And if you read through there one time, you'll pretty much have all the information you need to, be aware, to know the signs and symptoms and look out for the kids in your life. And if you know and suspect abuse, report it. It's the law, right? And not only that, who cares if it's the law? You should do it because you want to help those kids. You want to help that child, or you want to help that baby. No child deserves to suffer. I tell you that. And if they do, and a person knows about the abuse, they're just as guilty as far as I'm concerned. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'll be back on tomorrow morning extremely early, 5 o'clock in the morning, an hour earlier before my normal time. So if anybody is up and wants to tune in, please do. Otherwise, it's fine. I have to do the show early because I got to run out early in the morning. So have a great night, everybody, and we'll talk to you real soon. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I appreciate all my friends joining me. Thanks so much, Storm Chaser and Gypsy Witch. And I just love all you guys so much. Thank you for being here for me on my journey and in my life. I love you very much. Take care. Have a great night. Bye-bye.